So this video is going to be about how to disassemble and reassemble and service Mikuni BDST 38. Let's go. Let's remove all the chambers, the float chambers. You put the screwdriver in place, you put it between your knees, so there's quite a shock absorption thing and nothing's gonna break carburetor vacuum caps, and you give it 2-3 good hits and then you turn. If it goes, good. If not, a bit more hit. And once we do that with all of them, we'll just remove them. On first glance, they look really good condition. Let's see. And then the other side. So far so good. Otherwise, same thing. You hit them, but make sure you put the float balls so you won't damage anything underneath. Keep it in place with your finger while removing both screws. Why? Because the spring in there, which is quite strong actually, this one, it's gonna come out. And then you remove the vacuum membrane with the slide itself and the needle. Now if I turn upside down, the needle is gonna fall and it's gonna have that little shim which holds the needle in place. It won't go through the cylinder. Don't forget to remove these O-rings. Before we do that, let's do that. $125, $125, $122.5, because the outer cylinders 1 and 4, they get cooler than the 2 and 3, and they have slightly bigger jets, main jets, in order to help them compensate with the extra coolness they have. And this one, it's the pilot jet in there, always hidden. This one should be a 40. Now let's remove with the 6mm the housing, the nut and the spacer, and after that you can probably pull it out. Next step is to remove the slide housing, which is that. This is the needle jet which is connected with the slide housing. The slide housing is that white part. What you do is just push this one up and this should pop out, just like that. There's no ring there. It should be an O-ring right here, but the O-ring remained into the housing down there. Let's remove the pilot adjuster screw. It's the fuel mixture screw, this one. Like that. You turn it upside down and you have to have in your hand the pilot adjuster screw, the spring, but also a spacer, which I don't have in my hands, and the O-ring. So that's a bit tricky. Move it around a bit so it can unstuck from the place it is with a very fine thin screwdriver, and hit a bit more. Hey, there it is. And there it is. I managed to take it out. I tried to use. Now we have to remove that slide that opens up the choke and throws more fuel into the cylinders when you want to cold start the engine. To remove that, we have to take these 2 pins in here. These 2 anchors, you put them in, you push them inwards, one first, hold it, then the other, and as you hold, you push it that way. So all you have to do now is lift it. Next to remove is these caps here. Grab it tight, back and forth, left, right, and try to push it out slowly. And there it is. And this is the O-ring we're gonna replace here and clean more thoroughly inside the pilot system. The pilot. See these? Push them inwards, lift it a bit, push them towards the body, lift it a bit, and it should be able to detach from the body and take it out, just like that. Let me show you what I meant. See how it is? Now you can see more clear why we have to push them inwards. Now folks, we come to the point that we have to take a lot of pictures of how everything is connected, where we have spaces, where we don't, how the bolts are going in and out to separate all the carburetors, how the springs are mounted between 3 and 4, between 1 and 2, and between the two separate bodies. This is the spot where most people will stop restoring their carburetors, because let's face it, they don't need anything more. But in this case we have to go in depth and we have to separate them and replace all the seals in between, and the seals for the fuel line, the seals in here as well, in here. Next step, 1, 2. Remove these two long bolts, hold all 4 bodies together. So I'll start with the bottom screw. We have a 4mm Allen here and an 8mm nut here. $10, I think, and 10mm here. I'll try to remove one carburetor at a time. Lots of springs are gonna go off, they're pretty loaded, so make sure you won't lose them. And if you do, make sure you find them. Okay. There's another spring in here. That's carburetor number 4. Spacer. Now let's go for carburetor 3. Remember, for carburetor 3 we separated from the center point, so we have more shit here. It's my first time doing this, so I'm as puzzled and scared as you are, guys. Just drive it out of the screws and you should be fine. Okay, let's put these 2 spaces here, we'll find out later. That is for the top and this is in here, so that way if we put them in between the carburetors we know which gap they're coming out. And now we have to do exactly the same as we did between 3 and 4. We have to remove 1 and 2, pull them apart. Ugh, damn it. This is a spacer and a slide for the choke. I think it's wise to start cleaning one by one and not all together. And after a bit of scrubbing and everything, I'm gonna airball this one as well. It looks much better than what the other one looked. And now the hard part. We have to remove those 2 screws. Yep, those 2. In order to remove the plate, the butterfly, and remove the axle to replace the seals on the side. So with a nice screwdriver that fits perfectly in there, with supporting with your finger behind the axle, you remove the bolt. Remember, don't push without having anything to support it, because you're gonna bend the axle. The best option, I think, is a wooden stick in here. Put it like that and try to remove them, but always this has to be supported with pressure underneath. Otherwise, in your effort to push it downwards, you're gonna bend the axle and then goodbye to everything. In some cases, if they don't come out easily, we'll have with a Dremel to grind that part off and that. And of course, we're gonna need new screws for that, and apply Loctite in there as well. I'll leave it in. I'll do the next one. Remove both screws and now I'm going to pull it out. That's the one. Then you remove the axle just like that. Now the parts we're looking to replace are these 2. It's the seal and that washer. So inside the kit we have all the stuff we need, even for the axles. So these are the seals, these are the washers, and these are the screws. And then we have the spacer. It's a good idea to scuff around a bit with steel wool. Just lightly. And first let's put the washers. Second, we put on these seals. This grooved part right here looks outwards. Good. And then slide the butterfly in there. I've done it a bit with the steel wool, both sides, just a bit. And if you remember, as we look at carburetor from the front, the numbers go on the upside, not like that, upside. So we have to slide it in. It's really tight. Almost there. As you can see, there is a bit of misalignment, but this is going to come up perfectly once I put the screws in there. But nevertheless, I'll have to align it as perfectly as I can with the holes and then put the screws in, not let the screws do the whole job because I might do some damage. Now something we need here is a thread locker. Loctite 243, which is the blue compound, can be perfect for that job. Now let's try that without gloves, because gloves are very difficult to control around. Now I'll have to push a bit. I'll put both fingers behind the axle and squeeze tightly. It doesn't have to be extremely tight. Loctite is gonna do the rest of the job, don't you worry about that. And look at that, we have a fully functioning carburetor. A throttle. Now one thing I found very difficult on the first carburetor, this is carburetor number 4, is to remove these two screws. And the reason is smashed the end from the factory, so they won't come out. Now I have brand new screws for that, stainless steel. The only way to take them out without damaging anything is to grind that smashed end with a Dremel. And this is the best I could do, not state of the art, but better than what I was hoping. Yep, and it came out right away without any hassle. Let's see this one. And after a lot of push downwards, but support with my finger behind the axle so I won't bend anything, it came out. So yeah, Dremel is the way to go, I think. So having them removed, we have to push the plate out. We have to do left and right to take it out. And then we have to take the axle out. There is the seal. There is the washer. And then brand new washer. And then the seal. Remember, the seal, that groove has to go out, has to look out of the carburetor, which is towards that end. Put it back in. Clean this up a bit on a scuffing pad, a few times up and down. It's gonna be tight, so be patient. Very patient. Okay, and once you're in there, try to align that as much as you can, and that's pretty good. screw it in. Do not tight. Do not tight yet. Apply some thread locker on the other. In place. All the way down without tightening anything. Anything at all. Just in place. Moves freely. Good. Perfect. That's what we want. Now, finger behind the axle to support the pressure. We tight a little. Check for movement. The other one. Check for movement. Perfect. And now tight more. Not a tremendous amount, just nice snug. Loctite is gonna do the rest. Perfect. Now Carburetor 2 and later on 3 are a bit particular. Particular means more difficult because of that and that, but mostly because of the return spring. They both have a return spring. This one has a smaller, number 3 has a big one. And to remove the axle we have to remove the return spring from place, plus it's gone through the other side shaft, which we have to remove. That 12mm nut. We remove the washer C-clip, and I guess we have to take this one out. A bit of waggle, and it's out. Remember, the springs at the front. Same procedure. I'll grind off the edges of these 2 screws and I'm coming back. Now this is gonna go all the way out because there's no support in there, remember? All the way out. And this is a good way to measure how we're gonna put this spring back. So we have that. There's no second turn. From here, half a turn, and the spring is unloaded. So we know where to go now when we put it back together. So the spring goes on that. Stop in there. Okay. Seal. And I don't see a spacer here. The groove goes outwards as usual. And this is what we want. Good. One more seal, which goes outward. Now we need one of these washers. Bring it into the correct position. And tight. And now it's time to put the butterfly in. Letters out and up. Oh, almost spot on. Works all right. This is the other spread that brings load to your accelerator and makes everything return back. That's one point that attaches the spring, and that's down here the other. First things first, of course, filing with the Dremel. Side to side. Remember, springs at the front. Take the spacer. We have a spacer on this side, and look at that, there's no spacer on this side either, so just a sill. Always the groove outwards, and one on this side. And we can always put that first, which is the spacer, and slide in the plate. Test operation, yep. Go. So back to all four carburetors. Let's replace the O-rings of the vent tubes. Nothing wrong with them, but since we have them in the kit. This is O-ring number 6 on the kit of Light Tech. They're much softer. And let's replace the overflow. In the kit is number OR007. Perfect. And let's replace the fuel supply rings FS001 on the kit. We have 6 in total. And have a look. New with the old. The old one is absolutely cracked. And we'll put them here. Make sure it sits all the way down, and on the other side as well. The center supply line. Yep. Now I think it's safe to say that we have to put the bodies one on top of the other. So this is the point. We're gonna need some silicone paste to apply some inside the onto the O-rings, so they'll slide in nicely without damaging any of them. So this goes here. Make sure it's well lubricated. We have that spring here that pushes the axles away a bit. And now it's tight and closed. Springs are okay, the adjusting screws are in place. That's the main fuel supply. Okay, we take this one, which is just plain. So that spacer, that spacer, and that spacer. So we have 4 spacers. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, it's gone in. Now I have to put that spring on top of that. It's a bit tricky, but doable. After all, humans made that, not the aliens, so yep, it's all done. Carburetor number 3 is in place. We'll place it up here. We'll place it here. We'll place it right in there, all the way in. Done. Okay, now we have to spring, the washer, and then the carburetor itself. Make sure vent, overflow and fuel tubes are aligned and gone in nicely. But before we push in, remember the spring, the adjusting screws. Slide it and let the carburetor fall in. I think, my friends, this is it. We're done. It's 4mm Allen on one side, 8mm here. Doesn't have to be extreme, just snag it nicely. Once you see that there's serious resistance, everything works alright. Fine adjustments when we put them back on the bike. But now we have to put everything else. Thanks for watching, guys. This is the end of part 1. We'll finish the rest of the restoration on part 2, which is the next video. Again, thanks for watching and look after yourselves.